Hi guys, thanks for tuning in to another episode of Nuggets News. Today I've got a very special guest, and that is Jamie Mcintyre, a truth seeker and freedom lover. He's the chief editor of the Australian National Review and the chairman of the Global Economic Forum, pushing back against the World Economic Forum. So we're going to be getting into all the juicy stuff about the powers that be that have taken over Australia and the West. But mate, for those that haven't followed you, what's your story about how you first went down the rabbit hole and woke up to everything that's really going on?
Yeah, good question. A couple of things woke me up. Obviously, I wrote a book in 1999, what I didn't learn at school but wish I had. I'd already learned about the fractional reserve banking system and the scam and fraud that it was with the Federal Reserve and the banking family, elite banking families behind that. And I think it was in chapter 4 of that book. And it's probably one of the reasons that book became a bestseller, because people were fascinated about the way the Fed was set up in 1913 and that fractional reserve banking and how they were behind the Great Depression and how they're manipulating the central banking system around the world. So at that time, of course, Alex, that was like a wild conspiracy theory. But it is interesting since 1999 to 2025 how now you got, even last year, Elon Musk and Donald Trump saying we're going to end the Fed. Whether that happens or not, we'll wait to see. But obviously, Ron Paul has been someone that spoke out about the need to do that for a long time. That was part of the awakening. And then, of course, in 2013, I decided to launch Australian National Review. I really felt I've always been a predictor of trends, particularly financial trends. At the same time, I predicted the rise of Bitcoin back then. And I believed that within a decade, Australians would be fed up and start to realize that the mainstream media was lying to them and not telling them the truth. I thought we really need independent media, because I was hoping one day in the future we could build a credible third party and create a political revolution in Australia. And I realized that wouldn't happen without independent media, because as you know, in Australia, Alex, you got the Murdoch press, which helps the conservative side of politics, and then you got the Fairfax press, which is Labor, basically. So you got the two media platforms, and they dictate who's going to win. You need an independent media platform if you want a new third-party political revolution, which I believe many Australians certainly now want more than ever. So when I launched that, I had no idea how that would change my life. I had no idea. We heard about the deep state and things like that, but we still kind of didn't realize how prominent or how much of an Australia was under control of foreign entities. We just thought it was a little bit of a conspiracy theory, right?
Yeah.
And starting an independent media news network, I had no idea the attention that would cause me as far as from government agencies, etc. But what started to happen is that we used to be pro-vaccine, right? Like anyone, I was naive, ignorant, gullible, and I just foolishly believed what the government and mainstream media told us about vaccines. So we started to get whistleblowers, doctors, scientists, and whistleblowers coming to us at independent media, Australian National Review, saying, look, here's all this data. The vaccine industry is involved in wide-scale fraud, and they're covering up death and injury. And I started to look into it. And after I started reading these facts, I was ropeable. So that really, and we said, well, no more of this pro-vaccine nonsense. So that's what really woke me up, that there was a lot going on with the vaccine industry. And that led to 3 years later, I wrote a book called The Great Vaccine Con. And it's interesting, in that book, I highlighted by 2022, the government planned to mandate vaccines, and the industry was going to do that to get sales over 150 billion a year from a measly 5 billion back in 2002. So I think that also woke me up more about vaccines, which I was very grateful for. I mean, obviously being an anti-vaxxer 10 years ago or 12 years ago didn't make you very popular. It wasn't good for political votes, so it wasn't good for a necessary readership. You're an outcast. But obviously now that's changed, where I think a large percentage of people are somewhat skeptical of vaccines.
Yeah, I appreciate you sharing that. And I think if more people could change their default stance on all these issues with the divide and conquer tactics that people use, and half the problem to waking people up is that they have to unlearn and realize all the programming that's been done from, worshipping authority and believing authority in the media. And as I said, I did a pharmacy degree, and I was kind of skeptical and into health as I went into that. So I was learning both sides and going down both rabbit holes at once. But I completely agree with you now. I think that, the COVID jab woke up a lot of people, and then they've gone down further the rabbit hole and gone, you know what, this whole schedule is based on fraudulent big pharma science. But we're going to get into all that health food stuff, health food, the banking, the tactics of the cabal, breaking up the family structure, how they want to divide and conquer to cause chaos, and then ultimately 15-minute cities, digital IDs and all that. But I think a lot of people are pretty awake to banking now, as you said. People didn't care how the banking system worked or central banking, particularly in Australia, where we've been the lucky country and didn't have a recession for 30 years. But now I think everyone sort of understands what inflation is, and they're seeing debt and the cost of living. So what do you think are maybe like the most important things for people to understand now about how they're carving out the middle class with the financial system, particularly in Australia, with such focus on, you know, housing and that, and then gutting entrepreneurship and that type of thing?
Yeah, Alex, it's very interesting because I think the way they got away with it, with the takeover in Australia, is effectively a colony, originally a colony of the British Empire. I would say we're now a colony of Israel, which Israel runs the West. You're just like America is a colony of Israel. A lot of people get it the wrong way around. So we are effectively a globalist colony, but we've kind of accepted it because we've got a lot of rewards. But what we don't realize is that we've sold our assets, we've sold our resources very cheaply and haven't taxed them properly, nor do we get cheap energy when we're an abundant energy supply. We should be paying nothing for gas, etc. We should have domestic supply as part of all contracts that go back to, you know, we get X percentage, 10, 15% very cheaply for us to use, and the rest should be heavily taxed and goes into a sovereign wealth fund, we'd be rich. But we traded all that because they're able to control our politicians, and also the word lucky country was not really an endearing comment. It was a slur effect. You know, poor managers, no idea, just lucky, small population, a hell of a lot of resources. But we basically have traded all our resources for high-paying jobs. So because everyone got a high-paying job, and not everyone, a percentage of Australians, and we had a rich country, and we got rich, we didn't realize how lucky we were. Everyone was happy. So who was going to complain? But we didn't realize that we'd been sold out, that these high-paying jobs aren't that valuable if you're going to be taxed up to 50%. And then now, I talked about a few days ago that 52% of the government's revenue in Australia is from personal income tax, not from taxes from the resources and what we sell overseas, where there should be tax. What's the point of a high-paying job if you're paying up to 50% tax? Then you live in a country that's so goddamn expensive, you're broke at a high level. And then to buy a house now is inflated through the roof because we have a manipulated property market where now it's cooked itself, where you used to always be out of negative gear, and, you know, the average person, middle class, could become rich over 10, 20 years. That's what I taught my clients to do, and they did that for the last 25 years. Real estate was very good for us. But now they've screwed that system up completely. So we are now saying, many Australians starting to realize, hang on a minute, we've got a job. We sold our country out for a job, but now we're the ones paying taxes. We fund the tax bill because they know where we live, you know. We live in Australia, they tax us. They don't tax the multinationals because they're the globalists that are raping and pillaging our country. So we now have, and people would have put up with it, why they had a high standard of living, but they no longer have a democracy, and they no longer have a high standard of living. I live in Indonesia now. I had to leave Australia for my own safety as an independent journalist. You know, we criticize places like Russia, where they apparently jail journalists, where they were jailing journalists in Australia. So we don't have freedom of speech now. If you speak out, and obviously we expose the COVID fraud, and they come after us. And I was cancelled like 12 years ago for speaking out about vaccines and dare mentioning you should buy Bitcoin below $100. They hated that. And then, of course, I was hosting Arnold Schwarzenegger, and he was my political mentor at the time. He wouldn't be now. You see a lot of these people become woke and lost their ways. But launching a political party was, you know, the idea that if someone is articulate and has money and has a following, launched a third-party political party, would upset the status quo, where the globalists would potentially lose control of the nation, and a nationalist leader could come to power, or a nationalist group of people, and we'd go, this is bullshit. We're redoing all these contracts, and you fuckers will be paying the tax, you multinational companies. If you don't like it, get out of here. It's our resources. We'll nationalize the industry, or you'll work with us on a fair-to-fair basis. And we'll take our country back, because we're not just going to settle for high-paying jobs and being taxed to oblivion. So I think, Alex, that the big key is globalism, I call it, is slow creeping communism.
Yeah.
And the way they slowly creep and take over our country is they'll keep on increasing the taxes, they'll increase the red tape, the regulation, they'll strangle us in bureaucracy, and now we've seen that, of course. And the way the Global Economic Forum, the World Economic Forum, the woke nutters, you'll own nothing and be happy, which has got to be the dumbest PR slogan in human history.
Yeah.
And you can see how it's coming about. The way they'll do that, increasing property taxes, like you look in Victoria. Look what they did to the UK farmers. They want to get rid of farmers, just create a big inheritance tax, so the poor farmers, their sons and daughters can't afford to keep the farm because they've got to pay inheritance tax. So that all of a sudden you lose the farm. And in Australia, all of a sudden you won't inherit your parents' multi-million-dollar homes because you can't afford the inheritance tax or the bills that are coming, and they'll take property off you, or you can't afford your property because you'll be forced to sell it into a market where everyone else will be selling. So people don't realize how globalism, they don't have to rapidly introduce communism. They just have to tax us and regulate us to death, and you'll end up in a communistic state where you'll own nothing and meant to be happy, while these billionaire elites will own everything, and I'm pretty sure they won't be sad, Alex.
Yes. And we'll get into some solutions for all of this as well, guys, towards the end and whatnot. We don't want it to be all doom and gloom, but we need people. People have to know the truth. Knowledge is power to wake people up and start making these changes. So, yeah, I completely agree with what you're saying about this death by 1,000 cuts. And every year, if they can incrementally make things, 1% worse, and you hear your grandparents talking about the good old days and that type of thing, along with the media propaganda where they can come on and tell you that everything's okay, all that two-party political system, as you say, where people can say, if we just vote the other way the next election, but they don't care if the pendulum swings a bit that way and then they go back. Ultimately, both parties are owned and pushing us towards this same end goal. So, yeah, I completely agree with everything you've said there. But where do you want to go next? You touched on the vaccine stuff and the health stuff. The farming stuff, I think, is an interesting one maybe to tackle, because we had Belinda Fecky on the other day talking about this globalist agenda to ban, red meat, animal products, and this big push towards plant-based. Now, plant-based means that they can feed everyone as much sugar and refined carbs as they want and fill the supermarkets with that, give it 5-star health ratings. And this is all part of this agenda to keep people sick and dumbed down and not being able to think critically and, again, be physically strong and push back against these things. And so what are your thoughts on sort of the attacks on food, and happy to go deeper into pesticides, herbicides, and everything else they're doing now to make people sick?
Yeah, I think once again, it's like Big Pharma. It's designed to control the food supply. So if you want to enslave people, you enslave people through money, which they've done through taxation. Like income tax is an invention of the Rothschilds. There should be no income tax. If I was running Australia, straight away, income tax is banned. Will tax the resources going out of our country, and income tax is banned. Income tax is an enslavement. It's a Rothschilds created thing to pay back your hard-earned money, to pay back the fake money they print to own our governments and fake news media and fake politicians. So first of all, we've got to address that. The food supply, the globalists want to control the food supply, because if you want to control and enslave humanity, which they do, so you'll do as you're told, control your food. So if you destroy farmers, which they are doing and plan to do, and you've seen that in Europe, you see what they've done with the inheritance tax we're talking about there in the UK as well, and control a Monsanto, etc., and pesticides and patents where you're not even allowed to have your own seeds. So raid farms, like in America, etc., and if you have your own seeds, you'll go to jail. You have to use their GMO modified seeds. So it's all a control ground. I mean, these people are psychopaths. Really, if you wanted to run the world, just leave us all alone. Don't try and jab us with deadly poisons, and have your little fantasy of running the world and leave us alone. No one would care, right? But these people, they're not normal. Power goes to their head. They're greed, and they want to control the food source. So to do that, they need to disrupt farming. I need to get rid of farmers because farmers are self-dependent, independent. They feed us in our own country. People don't realize, Alex, how dangerous our centralized food system is. Think about Sydney or Melbourne as an example. If Woolworths or Coles could not stock their shelves, how long before those cities collapse? And this is how fragile our Western system is and how it can be, by a nefarious agenda, easily taken over to destroy and wipe out a Western civilization. It is crazy how we've given up our food security for simple convenience. I mean, Woolworths and Coles, if they couldn't stock the shelves, what would 6 million Melbourneians and Sydney-siders do? In 2 or 3 days, you would have mass panic. Within a week, you'd have people starting to starve. Within 10 days, you'd have a complete breakdown of society, of those cities, and they would flee to the country. And then farmers would have to have guns to protect their food sources. I mean, that's how fragile our system is. And in America, when you got them trying to manipulate the grid and take it down, and you see how many countries rolling blackouts, etc., by these globalist companies from a certain fake state that have created control. If they want to mess with us, our systems are so bad, they can. That's why one reason I don't live in the Western. I live in Indonesia, right? So even during the lockdowns here that didn't last that long, because it's harder to do, in more third world nations, the people at the ground level have a lot more power. So it's hard to force vaccines on them or force lockdowns because people like pretend to obey and then do their own thing, right? Yeah. Sure, it hurt the economy here, but people just went back to the village, had their own food, they could survive. So if the world went to lockdown, if you're in a country like a third world country, particularly like say Indonesia, abundant of food, you'd be perfectly fine. There's plenty of food. You'll be fine. In Australia, like I grew up on a farm 6 hours above Sydney, so if I was still there, I would be fine because we produce our own beef and food. But I can't say that about all my friends that live in Sydney, Melbourne, or Brisbane. They would be screwed unless you've got a backyard growing your own food. So we have traded convenience for lack of food security. We insure our house, right? Because in case the 1 in 1,000 chance it might burn down. But how many people have food security? No, how many people have 90 days worth of food aside in case something happens? Even 3 days, even 7 days in case the worst time is something. We just don't think about that because we're being conditioned to think, oh, we give our power away to these big companies. But if something was preventing Woolworths or Coles stocking their shelves, cities would collapse in record times. For me, that should be a concern, especially when you have a globalist agenda where they want to cause fuckery. And they wanted to play that game. And of course, they would blame Iran or Russia or some terrorist behind it. But as we know who the terrorists are, they're the people messing with the system. And it would be one way to enforce enslavement. So I'm not saying that would happen, but I'm saying it could happen. And it could happen so easily. So we have to become more an independent nation. The Western system has to become decentralized. And we have to wake up and become healthier, stop allowing poisons in our food. And Robert Kennedy Jr. is pushing back as much as he can in America. And I think, Alex, the solution always is awareness is the first step to change. Yeah. So the Great Awakening, just simply by making people aware, we go, oh, I didn't realize that. Now I know that. I'm going to change my behavior. Where others we know we shouldn't smoke. We've got awareness that smoking will kill you, but some people keep smoking. Well, they need a bit more than awareness. They need what we call leverage, some pain attached that, hey, if you keep smoking, your lungs are going to, decompose inside your body while you're still alive. And how's that going to feel? Yeah. Enough pain and leverage. People go, fuck, I'm going to stop smoking, Yeah. So changing human behavior comes first step as awareness. So even though we have to talk about things and know some of the truth, and the truth is ugly, truth is brutal. A lot of people are just easy to go back and believe in fake news media because it's kind of comfortable believing their lies, that everything's okay, or bunch of September 11th was done by a bunch of Arabs, bolt cutters, and and believe that stuff, or the Port Arthur massacre was done by Martin Bryant, and it's a random one-off thing. Whatever we believe what we're told, or COVID was the deadliest pandemic since the last falsified pandemic in the Spanish. I mean, it's comforting to believe the lies. because we'll be shamed if we don't by our peer-reviewed friends. And that's why many people in the professional class took the vaccine and couldn't see through the obvious bullshit because they had peer-reviewed friends and people. That's how they control us. Fame and fortune, social media. People want to be famous or want to be accepted into the herd. So if you post that you just got boosted, finally I'll be accepted. Yeah. And weaker minds are easily manipulated. Stronger minds tell people to go fuck themselves. And that's what we need to teach, Alex, at school. We need to teach the young people to learn to say, go F yourself. So you have every right to tell people to F off. Yeah. It's your life. You live it on your terms, and do not allow other people to bully you, to shame you, to censor you, to silence you. Tell them, like if someone told me to put a mask on it, I'd punch them in the face. Yeah. Not to suggest to be violent, but don't impose upon me something that you shouldn't. And if you try to, I'll punch you in the face. Does it make sense? In other words, I grew up playing rugby league. You grow up tough and you have a backbone. And unfortunately, in Western society, people have lost their backbone because they think you're not allowed to stand up for yourself. You have every right to defend yourself. And if someone's attacking you, you have every right to eliminate them out of the problem. You know what I'm saying? I'm not advocating violence. I'm advocating you stop violence by being strong. You don't allow people to bully you and shame you.
Yeah, standing up for what's right rather than going along with the herd for sure. And I think, like I said before, COVID has been the moment that's woken up a lot of people, and they've seen it firsthand, the devastation of the jabs and that sort of thing. And then there's a lot of great documentaries about 9/11 you touched on. Paul Motor with the WASP Files on YouTube has been doing a fantastic job about Port Arthur. That you mentioned as well. But I want to dig a little bit deeper into what you said, our reliance on Coles and Woolies, because no place is more kind of monopolised, duopolised, all these oligopolies in energy and food and all that type of thing. There's some crazy stats about what percent of every dollar that the average Aussie spends now goes to these big supermarket chains since they bought up, the petrol stations, bottle shops, everything now. So you're a bit older than me. How have you seen that change? And like compared to any other country, are we the most reliant on these couple of sort of big change? And then this all leads into how easy it's going to be to usher in that digital ID and not let you buy food or whatever from anywhere else.
Yeah, certainly. The challenge with Australia is we're the most highly urbanized nation on the planet. Most of us love cities, and we live in the city and we hug the coastline because the rest of the countries are uninhabitable pretty much. So Sydney, Melbourne is almost half our population. So that's dangerous as far as the globalist agenda, because we're more reliant on Coles and Woolworths and a centralized food system. It might be convenient, but so how this happened is that you're aware of BlackRock and things like that. So basically, they got so big in managing funds and the growth of managing more and more funds that even the Prime Minister was meeting with Larry Fink, I think, in the last few days with Kevin Rudd in LA or wherever it was. Begging, so they will manage our superannuation funds and future funds and all that nonsense. Is that because they got so big and so powerful? Of course, if you're printing fake money, it's not hard to buy up the world. It's a slight unfair advantage, and the rest of us have to work for real money. And we're taxed up to 50%, so we're at a massive disadvantage straight away. And if you dare become too wealthy and speak up and launch new media, independent media or political movement, then they're going to destroy anyone that's a threat to the system. So a lot of billionaires don't say anything. They become wealthy, they could do something, but they've got a lot to lose. So everyone's controlled because they don't want to lose their money. They're meant to become wealthy to become free. But then how many didn't speak up through COVID because they're worried they'll lose their brand? Yeah. They're worried what will happen. They don't want to speak out. They might lose their friends or reputation, or it might be negative impact on their business. So they're able to control people, and they keep on buying up the small players. We've seen in the grocery market industry, mum and pop stores disappeared. You said about the service stations there. So we don't have decentralized food. Not like in Indonesia, they have heaps of little shops, right? And heaps of little food. They thrive off that. And it's healthy for an economy. They're all little entrepreneurs, They're much richer than we realize and what we are. They don't have mortgages either. That's one thesis why I think Indonesia ranks second in the happiness index. Australia is dropping rapidly. They don't have mortgages and they don't pay much tax. It's two big reasons why you'd be happier. Yeah. And the cost of living is a fraction of it. So there's three reasons. And they have traditional values. We've lost that. That's four reasons why they're so much happier. So in Australia, we've given all that up. So the globalists are able to get control through BlackRock, etc. So they then buy up more and more of the companies. So the way they can control it, because they can pressure boards. That's how they're able to pressure the board. So they become a significant shareholder, or one of the biggest shareholders of most of the companies, and then they'll be able to pressure the board to go woke. And we've seen all the boards become woke up until recently, in particular, until Trump has pushed back against that. So they can control from the top down. You even seen Alex with The Voice. Was the voice they tried to make out was an organic, Indigenous Australian thing to help Indigenous Australians. So it had nothing to do with helping Indigenous Australians. The globalists hijack every community and manipulate that community. Go, oh, we're going to help you. The gay community, the green movement's been manipulated, infiltrated. Every LGBTQ, they infiltrated them all. The feminist movement, remember feminism? That was a Rockefeller globalist agenda, because they go, oh, let's brainwash women into working. Then we double our tax base. And then also, if they're working, they won't rush out and have kids. So it's a depopulation tool. The purpose, depopulation tool. We'll make women think we're all about female rights when they don't give a damn about female rights. They gave a damn about slowing the world's population down, putting women into work, don't rely on a man, break down the nuclear family. These are all globalist agendas that are disguised always in a good thing. Yes. Now they have to admit chemtrails exist and they've been spraying things in the sky, but once a conspiracy theory becomes so real and they can't hide it anymore, they spin the PR, oh, we're trying to dim the sun. Yeah. Bill Gates, etc., globalists are trying to save us and they're trying to dim the sun. You dimwit, who wants to try and dim the sun? Only a complete psychopath that's surrounded by yes people that think somehow he is God. I mean, these delusional people that are so far removed from reality, that think they're almighty and powerful, but are complete lunatics. So these people are the people who are in charge, and most of them are fronts, never created the wealth. They're fronts for the globalists. They're fronts for the deep state. Bill Gates, is he really a self-made billionaire? A little bit of help there, Zuckerberg, etc. They're all fronts. They're funded by deep state companies from day one. So they're made out to be these super successful people, but they had a helping hand. And as long as they did the bidding, they're all signed to Intel Q contracts. So if they ever stepped out of line, they forfeit all their shares and assets. They are nothing but employees of the deep state, a facade. So this is how they have the power. And our prime minister, who does he meet with? Bill Gates. Who does he meet with? Larry Fink, CEO of BlackRock. These are the people that run our country. Who do you think built Rio Tinto, owns most of that? Rothschilds. So we were owned for a long time, and we were foolish that we're like, oh, as long as we get jobs out of the deals, oh, that's good for Australians. Oh, great. So you want to be just have a job instead of owning the company? We should own all the companies. It should be nationalized. Yeah. We will welcome foreign investment, but not foreign control. There is solutions to solve this, but you need a strong nationalist leader that says, we're a predominant white country, white European settlers, white migrants, a Christian nation with traditional values, or were, and that's how it's going to stay. We built this great country, and we're going to choose who comes here, on what terms, and who gets taxed and who doesn't get taxed. And it's our country, and if you don't like it, leave. And this is saying this to the multinationals, etc. And so it's going to require a strong leader to do that, but that's not going to happen. The country gets the leader it deserves. And that scathing reflection on Aussies is the leader they have in Albanese, a very weak man. We are become a weak, lazy nation, and not enough people standing up and telling people to go get effed. Yeah. Until you can stand up and go get effed, this is my life, this is my country, go shove it. If you don't like it, leave. That's the attitude that we have to have. Not being bossed around by a bunch of weak globalist puppets and their weak puppet government politicians. And that's going to take some time. And to do that, we need independent media strong enough to tell fake news to go shove it.
Yeah, and we need fair elections as well, as we probably go to this digital rig system for voting as well. But let's maybe get into that immigration, as you said, because this is obviously a super controversial one. And I'd probably argue that Australia was a pretty successful multicultural country with people coming over and integrating, learning English, a lot of respect, no problems with marrying different cultures and all that sort of thing, because it was similar values, I think, ultimately. That's changed, and what's going to happen, I think, in particularly Melbourne and Sydney in the next 18 months is really scary when you look at what happened in Europe, where a lot of those places are now become minorities in their own country. And if you look at all the statistics, like these other places that have 1 billion people, you're not helping by taking sort of foreigners and asylum seekers. You can never really make a difference, because it's just such a small percent that you can take, and the rates that they're increasing their population, you're not even putting a dent in helping those other countries. And we tend to get these people that come over, and a lot of the time we're now seeing that they're radicalized or not integrating. They've got their own values that they want to push on everyone else, and we're the ones that no longer have any rights. Now to the point where you've seen that they're making laws where they get different laws and legal treatment across Europe and in Australia. So what are your thoughts on all that, the reasons behind it and that type of thing?
Yeah, once again, we've got to go to the core. And a lot of people are misled on this, Alex, and they're being played and manipulated. Once again, it's a globalist agenda. The agenda is called the Clergy Plan. People can look that up. And that plan has always been to destroy the West. The greatest threat, if you want to take over the world, who do you have to defeat? The people that built a Western civilization are white Christians, predominantly. So those of us have built, contributed, and created great nations, whether it's been America, Europe, Australia, right? So if you want to take over the world, you need to destroy white Christians. Look at Russia, one of the biggest white Christian nations on the planet. And these same mother effers, they created the genocide, the Bolshevik Revolution, and killed 30 to 60 million.
Yeah.
So these people that call us Holocaust deniers, that keep deflecting to one from a fabricated one 80 years ago, will call us a Holocaust denier. But they're the ones that deny all the real Holocaust they did. Understand?
Yeah.
30 to 60 million white Christians predominantly. They want to do that to the whole world. They want to make us a minority in our own country, and hallelujah, we already are. It's been like globalism is slow creeping communism. This whole immigration thing has been so we grew up being told we're racist. And we were like, are we really? Well, we've kind of felt maybe we are racist. Maybe we're ignorant and racist. We were never racist. Some might be, but most of it's told to silence you and censor you into accepting a foreign group of people that want to take over the world, that are deliberately and systematically flooding the West, including Australia, with mass immigration. Now, first of all, immigration is fine, just like foreign investment is fine. Foreign investment is fine, foreign control isn't. Immigration is fine, but mass and poor quality immigration isn't. And at the end of the day, the fact they've been able to get away with this because they censor us by calling us racist. If you're a white person and dare object to your country being flooded and you becoming a minority, you're clearly the racist. You're clearly the problem, which is complete other bullshit. The problem is these foreign individual psychopaths, the Clergy Plan, that come out of one particular fake state created in 1948 that have an agenda. The globalists will call them. I mean, there's multiple factions, but they'll call the globalists left woke elite that are deliberately and systematically, one, they bomb excess Muslim nations, the right faction, and then the left faction floods the West with these excess Muslims. And then you got Australians as an example, like, oh, Muslims are the problem. So now they blame the Muslims, not realizing the Muslims didn't bomb themselves, and the Muslims aren't the ones sending themselves to our nations. Someone is bombing their nations and then sending them, and predominantly sending the extremist Muslims. Look at Melbourne gangs, Somalian violent extremist Muslims that create all the gang problems there, and they're only going to get worse. I'm sure it's in Sydney too now and spreading around Australia. Violence we've never seen before is now happening, that they have in America and they have now in Europe, and they rape people that have different. What sort of nationalist leader would ever go, we're going to import problem people from a violent country that don't assimilate with who we are in a white predominant nation, and then put them in our cities and let's just see how it goes. No nationalist leader would do that. No one protecting Australia's interests would do that. But some foreign entities that wanted to slowly destroy us and invade us and take us over, they want us to believe it's the Muslims that are a problem. Yet I live in the biggest Muslim population on the planet, Indonesia, and are Muslims a problem here? No, they're peaceful people. Do they have Sharia law? No, that's all bullshit for a small minority of extremists. They don't have that. They're happy people. Do they like Christians? Yes. Are Christians accepted? Yes. Do they have traditional values like we used to have? Yes. They believe in the family. They have families, they have village, they have community. They're peaceful people. And that's the biggest Muslim. So people think, I blame Muslims. It's like, it's not Muslims' problem. You got to go, who's throwing the people in the river? If you're downstream trying to save people, pull them out of the river because they're drowning, you're going to wear yourself out. And many people are down there going, oh, it's the Muslims' fault. They're not going upriver going, well, who is bombing the Muslim nations and who is sending these Muslim people into the West, over too many of them, and not leaving them in their own country? That's your source of the problem, and it's called the Clergy Plan. It's been around a long time, and it comes from people that created a fake state 77 years ago and try and brainwash us that 77 years equals biblical times, which it doesn't, and that somehow God chose Rothschilds, a bunch of satanic Luciferian banker wanker family. That, why would God choose them? Did we not have fact checkers in 1948 to go, I just wonder if it's true that God chose the Rothschilds, they're God's chosen ones, and they can do as they want on this planet. I mean, it's complete and utter absurdity. But in the West, how many people support them? We must stand with them because we must stand against the terrorists and must stand against the Muslims. So they think the Muslims are the problem. And wherever we misdiagnose the problem, we're not going to have the solution. The solution is stop the foreign group of elites, foreign entities that control our nation, that are controlling our immigration policy. It's the same banker wankers. They don't want a property crash. So why did we have 1.7 million immigrants flooded into Australia in the last 2 years? Because the globalist banker wankers don't want a property crash and don't want to, because if the property crash, it would not be our problem, it would be the bank's problem. And then they would lose control of the government because the people would rise up and say, that's enough, it's our country, we're taking it back. So you're being flooded for a systematic plan to eradicate and minoritize white people. And if white people dare, white Christians, because white Christians are the threat to the factions that want to take over the world. And we don't get a backbone and stand up for ourselves, we will become a minority. Now, let me look at it the other way, Alex. China, India, Indonesia, Mexico, any of these countries. You can go and migrate to Indonesia. I'm a migrant in Indonesia. But would I come here with a plan to go and try and corrupt the political system and gain power and flood Indonesia or flood China or flood India with mass white people with a not so secret plan to make the local Indonesians or China or Indians the minority, and we take over their country and we're now the dominant power? And if they dare, Alex, if they dare object, oh, you're just racist. You're racist. I mean, it's absurd. Absolutely absurd. Yet white Christians are allowing themselves to be censored by thinking they're racist or told they're racist. It's a form of censorship, just like you're called anti-Semitic. It's a form of censorship. So unless people understand that this is because they blame the prime ministers or whatever, the prime ministers are just doing as they're told. The prime ministers didn't go to the vote of the people, go, oh, by the way, we want to now flood our country with Asians, as of, say, the Pauline Hanson era. We're being swamped by Asians. Well, we were being swamped by Asians. We didn't ask the Australian populace, do we want to be swamped by Asians? You're racist if you dare, don't want that. Now we're being swamped by, say, Muslims or extreme Muslims countries in some cases, or Indians, etc. It's not that immigrants are bad, but you want high-quality immigration. Australia should simply go, we'll choose. Where a nationalist leader would go, we will choose, like Russia. Russia's probably the best example. Putin is a strong leader, whether, in the West we're told to vomit and not like Putin, but why would we not align ourselves with a white Christian nation with traditional values that stands for the right thing? Why are we sending weapons to Ukraine, a sick, satanic, taken over country, taken over by the Rothschilds, the globalists? They want to make it Israel too and slaughter people, human harvesting, child trafficking. Why are we standing on that side against a strong Christian nation that has every right to defend its borders and stepped in to stop the genocide in eastern Ukraine of ethnic Russians? We should be on the side of good, not on the side of evil. So all these things interrelate, Alex, that we are being taken over because, one, Australians still haven't woken up, and they're going to now be these globalists want us pitted against Muslims and go, oh, Muslims are the problem, and we're going to fight. So the Christians and Muslims will think they got the issue. But it's not the reality. We have every right to say, no, we're a predominant white Christian nation and we'll stay that way. If you don't like it, fuck off. Not saying we're against immigrants. I'm pro-immigration, but pro-quality immigration, and at the right numbers so you can assimilate. But we're not going to be overtaken. Just like India, China, and Indonesia and these nations would never accept being flooded and overtaken by white people.
Yeah, no, I agree with all that. We've covered a lot of that on the channel as well. And anything, guys, that you don't agree with, do your own research and look it up. Don't take our word for any of this. Let's move on now to the kind of what comes next. We've seen the Palantir agreement recently. A lot of people wouldn't have heard of that company a week or two ago. I think it was the new iPhone teaser that came out yesterday, and they had the digital ID that was going to be ready. I think it was by the end of this year, integrated with the iPhone in the US. So talk about this digital ID that we've been warning about for so long. We've spoken about how it's going to tie into the supermarkets, your food, your energy, travel, the carbon credit, and under the guise of climate change, all this stuff that they're pushing. And it looks like they're accelerating. Like a lot of people saying Agenda 2030. I feel like a lot of this stuff wants to be rolled out even sooner. What are your thoughts?
Yeah, well, they certainly don't give up easily. And I think, we talk about solutions. Fortunately, the harsh reality is at some point in the future, we're going to have to accept these minority, small group of people, globalists, are going to have to be dealt with. They're not going to give up. We can protest about it, whatever, but they're not going to give up. So they're going to have to be dealt with. So we're going to have to accept that as humanity. Humanity is going to have to unite as one. Yes. And so this is the few that are the enemy of humanity, and they have to be dealt with. So until that happens, it's probably not going to change. But yes, they're speeding it up. How does a small minority of people, psychopathic people with more money than brains because they print fake money, control 8 billion people? Well, tech surveillance is one way. Digital ID is a chance to do that, and the food supply, and causing an economic crash and then forcing people onto digital currencies, central banks, digital currencies, etc. So they know how to play both sides. They want the tension between the left and the right. That's how they play it. Divide to conquer, divide to conquer. So even you might have nationalist leaders come to power that even, like, say, a Trump. I think Trump, whether you like him or not, I think he has good intent. He might be misled in some areas. He's manipulating others. But like Elon Musk, I'm a believer they actually have good intent. But they also are being manipulated. So I was at CPAC in Washington in February, and I was deeply disappointed. I was warned it was a Zionist conference. I'm deeply disappointed to realize that, the entire Trump, we thought we were going to get a political revolution. Many people supported Trump, right? A political revolution. But, they swarmed, the Zionists swarmed Trump administration. You don't get to be in the Trump administration unless you're a Zionist. And they have an agenda for the world, which is this tech surveillance, Palantir, etc., where a small minority of people can control the world because we're like below, we're subhuman, we should be enslaved. This stupid death cult ideology, it's pathetic, right? By weak men predominantly that are delusional, and we shouldn't be intimidated by one little bit. So they have this agenda. So I think what you're seeing in the LA riots, etc., right now, I think it is fast tracking. I think you're right. 2030 agenda. How are they going to do it? They can do multiple ways. Grid crash, bring down electricity, people starving. They can do mass riots and create a fake civil war. Or they can do an economic crash or combination of all three. So we have to accept there's an economic crash coming. I think you've seen with Elon Musk recently why he was upset. I think he had reason. They're now patching that up. I think he probably did regret posting a few things where they really went hard on each other. I think that was genuine. A great theatre, but probably genuine, but they're being manipulated. So Elon had every reason to be upset because he generally had good intent with DOGE, I think, to try and slash the budget and save the United States of America financially. But did all this work, realized it's not that easy, that, it was 2 trillion, dropped down to 1 trillion, dropped down to 175 billion, and probably dropped down, I think, about a third of that was real. So maybe say 50 billion. And then when Trump pushed through the big, beautiful bill, because it doesn't matter which side of politics, we always said, doesn't matter, they will push through the same policies. He would have been encouraged, bought off, or pushed this through. And Elon Musk realized America can't be saved fiscally. So what that meant is America's not going to be saved. Unless the AI tech revolution can save the economy, America's going to go down. And now the question is, will that pull down the entire West? Will that pull down the world into a deep recession or worse? And when will that happen? So they're the things that we're facing. We know where the financial system's on, life support. Is it going to be controlled demolition?
Yeah.
So the digital ID, the LA riots, I think is a definite, obviously that's a Soros agenda. Whatever, they're dropping off pallets of bricks for the rioters, that must be George Soros. That's his typical trick. Yeah. These globalists don't want to give up. And they're creating, and they got all the illegal immigrants there and they're funding them, etc. It's not an organic grassroots people. So, but they also are playing Trump because they know what exactly Trump would do. Trump's predictable. So he's going to go in hard with bringing the US Marines, etc. So hoping that would really blow up, etc. Because then they create the chaos. They manipulate Trump on one side. They know what he's going to do. They don't like him. They would like to get rid of him, but he still can be utilized and manipulated because the right faction controls him. The left faction, globalist Zionists, are the elites that were booted out of American power. But they definitely hate each other, these factions, because they're both competing to take over the world and run it out of Israel. They're both two factions, right? They generally hate each other. But I'm sure the powers to be right at the top are funding both sides and pushing the agenda. That's highly probable. We don't know exactly. So I think the LA riots itself is exactly to create this civil tension so they can go, what's the solution? We need digital surveillance, track and trace these people, just like they did after Israel did September 11th. It's like they wanted to bring in the Patriot Act, which they did when Israel did Bali bombing. Do we really need to mention who did Port Arthur? There's a pattern of global terrorism and massacres, which comes back to the one source, Mossad. Yeah. They did this to play the theater, to manipulate and push through and remove our privacy, remove where they could spy on us, etc. And the next step is the LA type riots is to bring in, we need surveillance. It's for your own good, of course. We need digital ID. And already in Australia, Alex, we have a lot of Australian clients. So I'm a property developer in Indonesia, and we're building an expat global city in Lombok. We just started, right? Because I was like, well, I can't change the world, but I can change one city at a time and build. How do we build the way the world should be? We can criticize and complain about, the way the world is, but we've got to go, hang on, well, we've got to do something about it. Let's stop bitching and moaning. Let's just start recreating the world in a better way. We're recreating a city and going, but the point being is that in Australia, etc., they can't, even now, if you try and get money out of Australia, we're talking 2030 where you can't. They are pulling in Australians trying to transfer, say, a couple of 100,000 overseas. They pull them into the bank. They bring in a private investigator from the bank. They sit them down. They interrogate them. They ask for all the documentation. They give them the documentation. They interrogate them. You're really sure you should be sending money overseas? And then when they do say, yes, I know what I'm doing. I want to send, it's my money. I'm sending it overseas. They will block the transactions. Bank of Queensland, CBA, Westpac, NAB, Suncorp, pretty much all the banks. So people don't realize, Alex, there is already quasi-capital controls on Australia already. I got my money out of Western banks and most of my assets out of Australia some years ago because I saw the writing on the wall. And we've been talking about this for a long time. And those who follow me, I've been a pretty accurate predictor of trends. Told people to buy Bitcoin at 75, gold at $200 an ounce, Australian real estate 25 years ago. One that followed me in independent media has become richer. Anyone that listens to fake news media is poorer and also sicker because they've been jabbed. If they listened to us, they'd be healthier. They wouldn't have took the vaccine. They would have bought a shitload of Bitcoin over 12 years ago. They'd be rich and they'd be happy. listen to the globalist fake news media, and they'll be sick and miserable. I mean, it's pretty obvious, right? So there's already quasi-capital controls. Now, is this because banks are insolvent in the West, even Australian banks, because they get rid of cash, which they're doing, as you know, try and go and get cash out of the bank account. You can't. And they're removing ATMs left, right, and center, because once they eliminate cash, then they can cover up their insolvency and you'll never know. And the Western banks system is on the verge of collapse. And how many Australians are so asleep? I got wealthy Australians. I said, do you have any money outside Western banks? No. Do you have any? Have you diversified buying property outside of Australia? No. I said, you guys are sitting ducks.
Yeah.
Slow creeping globalism is slow creeping communism. How long do we have before they will stop you transferring any money out of Australia? People go, I can use Bitcoin. That's the solution. Well, I hate to break it to them. Bitcoin's not the solution either. They've already taken it over. It's rigged, manipulated asset. And, it's sad. Once again, I've supported it as a libertarian from the beginning, not to get rich quick, but for financial, I was hoping it would be, even wrote about in my book, that in 1999, we want an alternative financial system. That was one of my big goals for my life, to help create that. And we thought Bitcoin would be it, but unfortunately, that's been hijacked. I mean, blockchain will be great, but it's a whole different topic. But, the globalists are getting control of this. So people, fiat is probably going to be controlled demolition. And I think they'll try and use USDT will become the new Fed. They can't print fake money anymore because no one's buying US dollars. They're going to mint it. So once again, people go for the solution. Was a genuine solution, and then they're going to manipulate and control it from the top and set people up. So just like with the Trump administration, we're not getting the political revolution we were promised. And unfortunately, with Bitcoin, we're not going to get the financial revolution we'll promise because of these mother effers, what they're doing. So it doesn't mean we can't win this, but to solve a problem, I always said this, a problem known is a problem half solved. If you know what the problem is clearly and specifically what the real problem is, it's already half solved. Because with awareness, we go, oh, fuck, if I knew that, I would have done something different. Now we know it, let's do something different.
Yeah.
So the problem we have is that misinformation, fake news media is still somewhat powerful, but it's declining. And people are confused, Alex. And so people don't know what's going on. But how much more do we have? Like, look at the news. Every day, things are rapidly changing. Elon Musk said, the tariffs could send the US economy into recession by the second half of this year. Do we have 6, 12, 18 months? I don't know. We could have an extended boom period from the inflation and what they did with printing all this money. But things are not rosy. We can't keep going back and going, well, we're just focusing on life, our own little bubble. I mean, it's nice to do that, but they're going to come after us again.
Yeah.
They're going to try and jab you again. They're going to try and lock you down again. They're going to try and put digital ID on you again. They're going to control your food again. And it's not going to be okay. So you either have to have a plan B and start escaping the West as an escape vessel, somewhere to go, or you have to have a plan B within Australia, which means have some of your money outside Western banks and some of your assets outside of Australia. That's what I would be.
Yeah, as someone that's been telling people to buy Bitcoin since 2012 as well, I still think that I agree that it's been captured by BlackRock on that for the most part now, but I still think it's probably the finite aspect of it is still better than having all your money in the bank, or at least diversifying.
Oh, absolutely.
Yeah.
And I'm not saying don't buy Bitcoin. I told people to buy it since $75. I'm just saying now, if you haven't bought any yet, don't go and sell your house and buy all in Bitcoin now, because it may go to $250 to $1 million. I'm not saying it won't do that, but I'm saying it'll do that through market manipulation. Then how liquid is it if it got to $1 million? It's still a falsified sense of security, because if everyone wanted to cash their money in right now, if everyone wanted to get the money out of Bitcoin right now, they're not going to get it out. It'd be like a bank run. It's the same fucking thing. Yeah. So it's better than fiat. The only thing it's got going for it is the alternatives are so bad, so manipulated that they're worse off. But I always say to people, hold crypto, hold real estate, preferably debt-free, some gold and silver, definitely, and have food supplies, and start just being a little bit smarter and accept that the world that you've lived in is coming to an end.
Yeah.
Things are going to change.
I also agree with that. Whether it's Tether or Circle just got listed on the stock exchange with USDC, it's almost like those two are becoming the central bank digital currencies that they do want to use. So that's the financial side of things. The health side of things, Jamie, we've spoken about getting back to like community level, trying to find local produce from farmers that aren't injecting these vaccines into their cattle and sheep and whatnot, organic veggies that aren't being sprayed with all these poisons. I think a water filter is an absolute must to get the fluoride and all the pesticides, herbicides, heavy metals that are now in the water supply. Plenty of sunlight, community, have a good group of friends around you that are into all this stuff. Start going to local meetups or whatever you can to build your own little family of people that know what's going on. What else is sort of like the general measures you do to help people?
Yeah, yeah. Well, I mean, it can be overwhelming for people. I think some people want to know the truth, and some people were probably better off not telling the truth because they're not going to handle it. So a lot of humans need security. We all have different needs. So the people that are likely to create change in a society, those who can deal with uncertainty, because we live in an uncertain, fragile world, and people, it's unsettling. And so people want certainty, and that's why they cling to what the government tells them or what the newspaper tells them, because it's like gives them a sense of false certainty, and that's dangerous, right? We have to become leaders where we have to understand that we live in uncertain times, we live in a fragile world, and we have to get certainty from within or within our faith, or from areas that are more accurate. So the truth can be unsettling. Someone's go, Jamie, just tell me the truth. I will deal with it. It's brutal, it's ugly, it's not popular, and it doesn't get you votes, and it doesn't get you readership. It gets you censored, it gets you name called, and get your character assassinated. I've been cancelled in Australia. I mean, they took my assets. I was telling people what the globalist agenda was, where they're going to remove your property rights. They took my property. They character assassinated me, and they do that in the media. And the problem people have is that people believe what's in the newspaper. Even some people in the freedom movement, they believe what's in the newspaper. I'm like, you realize intelligent people don't believe everything that's written in the newspaper? But people have got to stop this believing anything in fake news media, believing anything your fake politicians tell you. So unless we grow up and accept Santa Claus doesn't exist, be a bloody adult. If people grow up and use some common sense, the world will change. But why ever we they control us because we're so preoccupied with material survival. Because say in Australia, you've got a mortgage. They can control you. It's a slave. You've got a job, but they're taxing you up to 50%. And they're increasing your taxes. And then they keep inflating the price of property. So yeah, I'm rich now. My property's gone up to $1 million or $2 million. Until you go buy another home and you're poor and broke. I mean, it's illusion. So people got to decide what's really most important. We can't, the world was fucked up before we got here, and it's probably not going to unfuck it, but we can do our part to live our happiest, best life, and then make a difference bit by bit. And what do? We change our habits. I mean, for me, I'm building a brand new city for expats that, so Australians can't afford housing. But we're building housing that will be affordable for Australians and Westerners, that people want to escape the West, because we know that's a trend, Alex. We know the trends. And so we're doing what we can. So people have got to start doing what they can.
Yeah.
It's not all doom and gloom. There's been a lot of evil in this world for a very long time before we were born, and that will probably continue after we die. But there's a lot of good in this world. So we have to be the good, not the evil. Yeah. We have to be, and to be good, you can't think you're good. You can't think you're a Christian and cheer on the mass slaughter of innocent children and women in Gaza and somehow think you're a Charlie Kirk and you're going to heaven, Yeah. You can't be delusional like this. You can get it all right in most areas, and then like Charlie Kirk as an example, for those who know Charlie, good Christian boy, but he stands with Israel. He cheers on the slaughter of innocent. So if you don't understand the truth and you're like that, then that's why we have wars. Wars exist because of dumbed down Westerners. Because they need our support, right? They need our government support and our support. So stop giving them support and stop being manipulated. These people know they can lie and get away with it. They know that we'll find out the truth eventually. How many people already know Israel did September 11th? A lot of people do. But there'd be plenty of people in Australia that, really? I didn't know that. I believed it was a bunch of Arabs who couldn't fly planes and bolt cutters. How many people don't know that Port Arthur wasn't a pre-organized? Because they listen to fake news media. So if we continue to be dumb, down, brainwashed, then we're going to continue to be manipulated and played like fools. And I don't know about you, I don't like being played for a fool. I like to know the truth. And it's not easy. There's a lot of confusing information out there, but it takes research, it takes effort, it takes everyone, I think, has an obligation. The reason we had the Iraq war is because Netanyahu lied to US Congress and lied to us, lied to John Howard. I bet you speak to John Howard today, he would have to, if he was allowed to admit, he was deeply misled. I don't think John Howard had bad intentions. He seriously believed there was weapons of mass destruction.
All blackmailed, yeah.
Yeah, no, not now. I don't believe John Howard knew about the Port Arthur massacre. They're lied to like all of us. It's a set-up operation, right?
Yeah.
So they do Mossad laughs about it. They do wage war through deception. They know it's a theater. They create the theater. They fuck with us. When Australian National Review investigated who was behind the Bali bombings, because we thought, hang on, because they want to make out some Islamic extremists. And then we thought, I wonder if Mossad was behind that. And we found out, guess what? Mossad was behind the Bali bombings, of course. We should have knew that all along. But what we didn't realize is they were also behind the same people that coordinated the Bali bombings for Mossad were the same people that did Port Arthur massacre. So they've been playing and manipulating us for a very long time. Then they kill a couple of Jewish outside the Jewish embassy recently. Remember, like a few weeks ago. And then it's flooding all over, all these paid shills flooding all over, make them the victim again. And we've got to stop these evil Muslims and terrorists. Do you think, of course it was Mossad that did that.
Yeah.
October 7th. Hamas is evil. So people, once again, they figured out the COVID was a fraud. How many people, even the freedom movement, eventually figured out COVID was a fraud and don't take the vaccines. This is bullshit. And then October 7th happens, and they go straight back into believing babies were baked in ovens, babies were beheaded, girls were raped, and Hamas is super evil and Israel is good.
More and more of it's coming out, though. The USS Liberty, the list goes on and on, where people are finally joining all these dots. That's the same group of people behind basically everything evil that's been happening for as far back as you want to go in history, basically. But Jamie, you've got some solutions. You've got some conferences, meetups. I'll put all the links to follow all your stuff down below. But talk us through what you're coming up.
Yeah, so what we're doing is, as I said, we must support independent media. I've poured millions into it with Australian National Review and helping others for the last 12 years. I was heavily targeted. It's cost me. I'm suing the Australian government next October. I was cancelled. I had many companies destroyed, land assets stolen. I was framed as losing investors' money back 10, 12 years ago to shut me up, right? To stop any political party growing, to expose more of this. As an independent journalist, been heavily targeted throughout the COVID vaccines, had to flee my own country at one stage looking for asylum in Russia 3 years ago. It wasn't safe because every time I come back to Australia, I was pulled into a room and interrogated in my own country, right? For doing nothing more than telling people the truth. So I've suffered a lot, but I will sue them for $250 million, whether I win that or not. It's not about money. I don't really care. I'm rebuilding my empire. But we want to fund independent media. We must. So we're holding the first Global Independent Media Awards on the Gold Coast. This will be live streaming as well, so people can't get to it. It's a two-day free speech summit. We must stand up for free speech and independent media. And on the Saturday night, it's an independent, like an Academy Awards though, but for independent media journalists. Candace Owens, Tucker Carlson, Joe Rogan, all through to citizen journalists. A whole host of people being nominated for these awards. So that'll be a great night. But it's a two-day event. It's free. We're giving away our sponsors and Australian National Review and marinabaycity.com, and the major sponsors are giving away 1,000 free tickets so people can go free to the Free Speech Summit. They can just go to freespeechsummit.com now and get those tickets if they're in that area. Otherwise, they can watch it on live stream. Australian National Review, ANR.news. So, but what I'm saying to people, this is your one and only shot. If we do not support independent media, you're never going to get a political revolution, and you can bitch and moan all you want, but you will lose. You either support this industry, get behind this event, and so we can make this an annual event and stand up for independent media to take on fake news media and the globalists. If you fail to, accept defeat. Because without a strong independent media, not just in Australia, but around the West, we're not going to win. It's our last line of defense. Look at how much Julian Assange has sacrificed to expose this truth, you know? Look how good Candace Owens has done as a job, you know, exposing this. Tucker Carlson, Joe Rogan, etc. You know, there's so many, Whitney Webb, so many great, you know, journalists out there that risk a lot. I mean, some of our journalists have had their lives threatened. You know, it's not easy. People risk everything. So we, as people, must support it. Otherwise, accept defeat and go, it's not going to. So we can make a difference. We must always focus on what we can do. We can have an obligation to know the truth. We should share the truth. We should speak the truth, and we should help independent media spread that truth. And let's take these fuckers down with fake news media. We just have to make a mockery of them, use satire, comedy, sarcasm. And Australians, you know, Alex, we're very good at sarcasm. Yeah. Use our sarcasm. Yeah. Use satire to make an absolute mockery of the World Economic Forum. You own nothing and, you know, be happy. I mean, it's just complete and utter bullshit, right? So they're easy targets. And they're weak men, remember? These are run by weak men. Do you think Bill Gates, are you going to be intimidated by Bill Gates, Klaus Schwab, Fauci, Soros? So that event, Free Speech Summit, you can follow Australian National Review, ANR.news. We appreciate your support with that as well.
Jamie, it's been amazing. I love your passion. We've got to keep waking people up one at a time, and we can make a difference. So we'll have to have you back on again in future. Good luck with everything. I might see you at that summit, and I know you guys at home have really probably enjoyed this one, so make sure you support all of Jamie's work. Talk soon.
Thanks, Alex.
Cheers.